All right, in the interest of time, I think that we're going to go ahead and get started because we do have some introductions to get through as well. Welcome to Sponsors at Home and Mentors Away, Seismic's March event all about the benefits of sponsors and mentors and the differences between the two. We hope that you learn a lot today, and we'll have time for Q&A after our guided discussion. And if you don't feel comfortable asking your question aloud during that time, you can also drop it during the chat at any time, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Before we get started, I have some introductions. First, I'm Erin from Seismic. I'll be moderator, and Seismic is a technology platform for the life sciences to help scientists and engineers find roles that meet their skill set and to explore and develop their career through events like these. If you're interested, I encourage you to check out seismic.com/scientists. And we're pleased to have Dr. Joanne Kamins as our expert and guide to sponsorship and mentorship today. Dr. Kamins earned a PhD in genetics from Harvard University, and 7 years into her first job in pharma, she discovered a calling to understand what led to the lack of diversity in science, especially at senior levels. Dr. Kamins' leadership in scientist-serving organizations, past and present, is extensive and includes being a founding president of the Boston chapter of the Association of Women in Science, being a founding president of the Boston chapter, being an advisory board member for numerous women in science and engineering organizations, and director of marketing for the Healthcare Businesswomen's Association in Boston. Dr. Kamins is currently consulting with many STEM-based organizations around their diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. As an expert in mentorship, sponsorship, and an advocate for scientists and engineers to find supportive workplaces where their careers can thrive, please welcome Dr. Kamins with me. We're so pleased to have you.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm also an advisor to Seismic, I should say. So it's been really fun to watch Seismic grow and supporting life scientists of all different social identities. I've really appreciated your work on DEI and your recruiting. So great job to Seismic. Glad to see everyone this evening.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us as well. I think we start out with the question kind of posed in the intro. What's the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, and how do they support personal growth and career change?
Yeah, great. That's a great place to start, kind of distinguishing the two. To be fair, mentors can be sponsors and sponsors can be mentors, but those two activities generally fall into two different categories. So sponsorship is really usually someone within your workplace or perhaps in your field who advocates for you vocally, speaks up for you, mentions your name in meetings, suggests you for promotion, supports your advancement, and perhaps give you an inside look into the more senior ranks of an organization where you're perhaps not at that level yet. So maybe it's someone at the next level, maybe it's someone even more senior, maybe it's just a peer that speaks up for you when you're not heard in a meeting, or when your work is spoken about somewhere else and you're not given the credit for it. In general, it's how people support one another in advance. So many people feel like discomfort about talking about their own strengths and tooting their own horn, if you will, the euphemism for like speaking for themselves, but it can really be helpful to have a sponsor to do that for you, so that's really what sponsorship is. Now, oftentimes, if you have a great sponsor and a supporter, they may also offer mentoring advice and learning and guiding, but within the workplace, mentorship is something that tends to go a little deeper. And so mentorship is really not so much about advocating for you or getting you a job or getting you a position. It's more about asking questions, getting to know you well enough to support your professional growth, holding you accountable for your goals. It can be informal, a coffee one time. It can be someone that you have coffee with every month. It can be someone that you go to when you need their particular expertise. So mentorship can take many forms. It can be a one-off. It can be a lifetime relationship. It's not something scary and big. Nobody has one mentor. Nobody has to have one sponsor. And people are scared away by the word mentor, like it has to be formalized. I bet you have a lot of mentors in your life that you don't call mentors, so mentorship is really something that's ongoing. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about how to work with those two types of different relationships, but that's basically the difference. And I think why we called this mentorship at home, sponsors at home and mentors away is that mentorship usually goes a little deeper, and you can become a little vulnerable. And that people are not usually so comfortable having that type of depth of relationship that it takes to get there at work. And that's totally normal. This is our professional place. It's not necessarily our personal, you don't have to spill your whole everything at work necessarily. So it's really good to have mentors that are not at your work. And you may have some mentors at work as well that are less deep, less personal relationships, but it's really good to have people externally that you can really get close to, and be really honest with yourself and honest with each other. So yeah, long answer, but I hope that was helpful.
I wanted to double click on one thing. You mentioned that a sponsor might also offer to be a mentor. In your experience, is that a good offer to take?
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't say, I'm going to also be your mentor. They might just give you some advice or feedback. And I'm kind of following the Ruth Godian language for feedback. I try really hard. So do as I say, not necessarily as I do. Taking feedback gracefully is really difficult. And what Ruth says about this, and look her work up, she's great. Feedback is the wrong word. It's really an opportunity. It's an opportunity to do differently, better, learn, educate. So a sponsor may give you some input about, hey, I saw you in this meeting and, it would have been better if you would have done X, or I think you should do Y. And, maybe you take their advice, just like with a mentor, you listen, but listen to them because their advice, their input, their opportunity to learn may be a really good one because they'll see you in action at work potentially, or in your field, or, something close to you usually. I think that, we can take mentorship in many forms from many people. It does not have to be one formal lifetime relationship that drags you along for your life. Like, that's just not how it is. It could be like this week, it could be this year, it could be something that was 5 years ago that you recall when you need it. Mentorship can take many, many different forms.
So I also mentioned in your intro that in addition to being an advocate for mentorship, you're also an advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion. What role do these relationships play in workplace diversity and inclusion?
Yeah, so these relationships play an enormous, and the reason why I originally got involved in mentorship, some 20 years ago, was because of all the things that we do to advance people with underrepresented social identities. So in STEM, that includes women, even though we're half the people, we are underrepresented in the workplace, of course, and under recognized. People, people with different colors, people with different ethnicities, disabilities, LGBTQ, all of those people are marginalized in STEM in different ways. The one thing, when I did my research and discovered the inequities of, promotion, advancement of women that was working, was strong mentorship relationships. So is an enormous amount of data that shows that establishing these relationships, providing mentors, can make a real difference. So from an advancement, from an equity perspective, it's really, really important to increase communication. And so between oneself and a mentor, and to get that kind of inside look, just the same with sponsors, right? So if you'll forgive me for saying so, the majority of people in our STEM workplace are white men, and they have been using sponsorship relationships to advance one another for many, many centuries. The rest of us need to get on board and do that really strongly. I've spoken with some people who say, oh, it's not fair to do that. It's like, it's like cheating, using the old boys club. I'm like, you should use whatever club it takes. That's what people do at work. They support one another. What's the best way you can give back for someone who sponsors you well? You sponsor the next person. That's how to give back and do that and keep that chain going. There's nothing dishonest about it. There's nothing, there's nothing weird about it. It's just how things work, right? So we really want to be supporting one another, and that makes a big difference in the workplace. So it's going to make a difference in equity for promotion, opportunity, advancement, and it's going to make a difference in keeping people in their careers from a mentorship perspective. So both of these things are equally important from a diversity and inclusion perspective.
You mentioned that mentorship doesn't need to be this scary long-term thing, but there also are kind of long-term organized mentoring programs. Should you participate in a program like that? And if you do, there's many out there. How do you find a good one?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a big fan of mentoring programs, with one really huge caveat. And I do not think that a mentoring program that matches you with one person can do a very good job of that. So if you think dating apps, you know, any kind of app that matches people, it's going to be really hard to get a hit, right? You're going to have a lot of swipe lefts before you swipe right, if I have that terminology right, you know. And with all those people that you swipe right, maybe one out of some very small number is a hit as far as building a relationship. You may have a nice coffee with a random mentor that you're matched with in a program, but will it turn into a relationship? It's pretty hard to make that happen. So I'm a big fan of one-on-one mentoring, but I think you need to choose those mentors that fall into a place in your life where you somehow hit it off. They can be peers, they can be more senior to you. I have mentors who are less senior than I am that mentor me in some things, but we hit it off. We learned from one another, you know, and we liked learning together, or, you know, teaching one another perhaps. And so then it developed into a longer term mentoring relationship perhaps. But mentoring programs, the ones that really work well, have a few characteristics. My favorite kind of mentoring program is actually a group mentoring program. And I'm a big fan of peer mentoring. So mentors do not have to be more senior than you. Like that isn't a requirement of, you know, that isn't a requirement of something working as a mentoring program. I'm just looking for a link here. I want to, so I'm a big fan of peer mentoring, because someone more senior than you may not have time, or they may not get you, but your peers, they get you, you know, they understand you. So I think peer mentoring programs are really great. There's a lot of great peer mentoring programs for women in the Boston area and in certain national organizations. So Healthcare Business Women's Association, Association for Women in Science, Women in Bio. And there are programs like that for men and other you know, sexual identities also to join. So you can reach out to me, I can help you find one. But if you have one in your workplace and it's group mentoring, I strongly suggest that you sign up, because those early, especially in an early career, if you participate in a mentoring program, it gives you a chance to sort of learn to be a mentee and learn to be a mentor. So group mentoring, you get to do both. And I'm a big fan of doing both. Like there's always someone you can mentor. You are never too early career to mentor like the next level, you know, or a peer for that matter. So I'm a big fan of that. So I definitely think you should participate. So what makes them good? Group mentoring programs have a really good chance of being helpful. And here I'm going to put a link to some information on peer mentoring that's on iBiology. I have some videos there that you can watch. There's a time commitment that's designated. So like it's a year program. Many groups continue to meet, many people continue to meet and keep the relationship going, but there's at least a time commitment that's expected of you. Usually goal setting is part of it. And you know, there's some oversight and responsibility. So you want people to have some pressure to attend and participate, because in most of the programs that I've organized, and I've organized maybe over 100 mentoring programs, when people are like have some responsibility to attend, and people attend, they have a great outcome. What happens is if they don't go and they skip the meetings and they don't make time to meet, that's when there's dissatisfaction. So, you know, if you're interested in having me come to your organization and talk about mentoring, I can get into more detail on the setting up a really good mentoring program. We don't have time for that today, but there are a lot of ways to make a mentoring program that can help people really thrive. And hundreds and hundreds of people have gone through some of the programs I've participated in and had great outcomes. So, and we have a lot of data to show what are the factors that make that happen.
Do you think areas, because some of us are quite dispersed outside of major areas that have a lot of mentoring opportunities, for mentorship opportunities that are purely virtual, do you think those can also work as well, or having that in-person component is helpful?
Great question. So back in the day, I was muchly in favor of trying to meet in person. And when that's possible, I think it's still nice to at least early at some point in the program. But it turns out that group mentoring, I don't know about one-on-one, but group and peer mentoring, as long as people show up for the Zoom regularly and get to know each other, you know, because it takes a little time to develop the depth of relationship that really works for mentoring. So it's like not meeting one, it's like meeting 3 or 4, where like the magic starts to happen, you know. that actually it's not too bad on Zoom. And there are a lot of these programs now that have a remote component so that you don't have to be excluded if you're not in an area where, there's a density. Like in Boston, we have many mentoring programs that you could participate in. So for the groups that I organize now, if it's possible, if they're not in 10 different countries or 5 different states, or, I do suggest that it's nice if they can occasionally meet in person, maybe when it's safe and it's outside and everyone tests for COVID or whatever the comfort level is. But if you're consistent and you work at it, you can work in Zoom. Now, if you're going to do that, I would strongly suggest that their first meeting is about inclusive meetings. And so I have some content that I share with people how to start off well so that everybody gets a chance to participate and benefit from a program like that. Great question.
And you talked about in the difference between mentoring relationships and sponsorship relationships, even though there can maybe be some overlap here and there, that generally mentoring relationships work better outside of work, where they can be a little bit deeper, and sponsorship relationships do a lot better in a workplace environment. But a lot of professional organizations, as you mentioned, have started doing their own mentorship programs.
Yep.
What can be done to design these programs to succeed, or what are the elements of a well-designed workplace mentoring program?
I think it's great. I mean, I think if you had a mentoring program at work, I think it would turn into sort of a sponsorship situation as well, because you'd support one another in the workplace. That's one of the nice things about mentoring is, you get to know someone, which is a real part of inclusion as well. Like if I don't really know you that well and I sit next to you, I'm going to have biases that are naturally going to come up. The better I get to know you, the more those biases tend to shrink away, right? So getting to know people deeply. And also it's great for organizations to have group mentoring programs, because people from different parts of the organization can be brought together. It creates great communication and learning about different parts of especially a larger organization. So I'm not dissing on in-house mentoring programs. They just have to be designed properly. I think they have to be group programs. I think they have to have, a certain kind of intentional selecting of the groups, so that some effort made to make groups of people that are working on some similar developmental areas. I think there needs to be some accountability. So perhaps somebody checking in that the groups are meeting, that they have the resources they need. A lot of times I do that. I provide resources. I'm like, people have my email address, and if they're looking for a particular topic, I can help them. Also, I would say the number one thing for any mentoring program that you participate in is that everybody sits in on one training together, so that everybody starts out on the same page with their expectations and understandings of process and what mentoring is and what the expectations are, and the organizational expectations for accountability. So and when I do mentoring programs, it is mandatory to be at that initial training to participate. The only time I've let people off the hook is like we've had people giving birth during the training, and I said, I'll make it up with you. There has to be like a really serious reason. And that's worked really well. So that is another factor that boosts up the satisfaction levels at the end of the program, when everybody participates in some kind of onboarding training. And that's really important. I love to do that training. I've done it all over the world. It's probably one of the most impactful, parts of my outreach, I would say. So
in doing the outreach, being someone from outside the organization who's coming in and setting up these mentor programs, is that what you typically see as the best option? Like, is there potential for conflict if someone who, say, higher up is the one who's organizing the peer mentoring for people who are more junior?
Yeah, good question. I would say if it's done well, it could be organized in-house. I think there's a sort of, I try to get my resources out there so people can do this. I mean, the link that I posted, I have other resources I can post. It's good to have an expert. So I interact with mentoring programs in different ways. Sometimes I do the whole program. I do the matching and and I'm there as a resource for the whole time. I do the kickoff. Sometimes I just come in and do a training at the beginning, and the team on site creates the groups and does the recruiting and does the rest of the work. I think the really important part is just that there's a planning committee, there's an accountability, that there's someone getting everybody on the right page. I have no issues with an HR team or a people team setting up a mentoring program. I just want them to learn how to do it properly. And I strongly suggest whenever I meet with people not to do one-on-one matching. One-on-one matching terrifies me because what happens with at least 75% of the matches is it doesn't click. It's not always bad. Sometimes it's bad, but sometimes it just doesn't click. And then people say, oh, mentoring is stupid. It's not useful. And that's the worst thing, because mentoring is useful when you find the right person to give you, opportunities for growth and development, ask you the deep questions. Like the best mentors, all they do is like ask you hard questions. Those people, right? And so, I think, for me, it's really about, setting it up in the right way so that people can benefit. And it's a hit every time.
You mentioned one of the responsibilities you have for the mentees is showing up to that initial kickoff meeting unless there's an emergency and you can't make it. What are some of the other roles and responsibilities of a mentee or someone who's in a sponsorship situation? And are they different between mentee and being a sponsee?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I guess we have the mentee and the mentor and the sponsored and the sponsor, maybe, right. Yes, that's hard. So I think if you are sponsored, let's start with that. Your job is to do great at what opportunities your sponsor gives to you. So because you make the sponsor look good if you do well. So if your sponsor says, I think that Joanne should take over this project, and she vouches for you, and you then take over that project, then your job is to do it great. And if that means getting input, advice, mentorship, advice from the sponsor, wherever you can, you have to hit that project hard, because that's what you owe the sponsor. Do a good job, make them look smart. That's the payback for being a sponsor. Okay. The sponsor's job is to advocate for you in places where you are not usually, where in those discussions where people are being discussed, tapped, promoted, given opportunities, or to actually give you an opportunity themselves. That's a great form of sponsorship. I have a new project. Will you do this? Will you lead this? So that's the sponsor's job, is to really choose the right people and, make sure that they're seen and heard. It's interesting. Amkar, I see that you made a comment. You have to look for someone's desire to see if they can be a mentor or not. So people, if you ask someone like, will you be my mentor? That's such a loaded term. Generally people like go, oh, I don't know. That sounds like so much responsibility. I never recommend that you ask someone to be your mentor. I recommend that you ask someone to have coffee one time, and or a virtual Zoom. Will you talk with me for half an hour? And the mentor's job in that case, the mentee's job, I'm sorry, in that case, is to show up with good questions, having researched what that person might offer them, as a mentor. The mentee can really be proactive about setting the meetings, asking the questions, and then really listening to the responses. Like, you don't have a responsibility to do everything that a mentor says, but you have a responsibility to listen and consider it. Right? That's your responsibility. And so, and if a mentor asks you a question or holds you accountable and says, why didn't you reach this goal? You have to think deeply and work with them about it. So that's the main mentee responsibility, is to be open to opportunity and feedback, and to really lead in scheduling and coming up with the content. So people will, I will have a Zoom with many people who reach out to me that I don't know. And we get on the Zoom and I say, how can I help you? And they have no idea. They haven't thought about it. That's a big waste of their time, and it's a big waste of my time. I have certain areas of expertise. If you give me some specific things we can talk about, then we have something to talk about. But if you're expecting me to lead that conversation, I don't know you yet. Now, that's not true at meeting 10. So what might happen is that first meeting goes well, you get good advice and you hit it off. You just like each other, right? And you say, this was so great. Could I contact you in a month and just let you know how it went, this thing that you suggested, and, could we do this again? And sometimes the potential mentor will say, yeah, this was great. No problem. This was easy. They don't even know they're mentoring. They're just giving you advice. Okay. And then you do it again. And then maybe you do it again. And then maybe you meet in person 6 months later. And then, now you have some, investment in one another, and maybe you do a favor for them sometime. Maybe they need advice about a restaurant and you give them advice about that. It's always a two-way street with mentorship. You really are both benefiting from the relationship. And then it's the mentee's job to say thank you. So one of my favorite things is when people call me and say, hey, you gave me this advice, I tried it and it worked. Thank you so much. That's all you need. That's what the mentor needs, is some like gratitude and acknowledgement. And how did it turn out? So if I have that networking coffee with you and you email me a month later and say, I got that job because I used some advice that you gave me, that's what makes me happy. And that's what makes most people happy. They're happy to have helped, you know. Um, and Amkar, another good comment, he says it's based on how you communicate. So again, you never know who you're going to communicate well with. That is a very individual thing. So you have to find, I know some people who mentor well, one person, and don't mentor a different person well. Communication is generally very, very individual. If you're in a mentoring program, that's great because you'll have a framework around the communication and some training that will help everybody do that in a little bit more intentional way. So there'll be some more similarities. But someone who's a good mentor for me might not be a good mentor for you. And the same thing with mentees, and the same thing with sponsors. It's that's why you're sort of always on the lookout for the relationships that seem to click.
Thinking about that, you mentioned communication, and also you mentioned a mentor is there to ask you some really tough questions sometimes. You also mentioned before that it's sometimes hard to get asked a difficult question. There's some element of that reactivity. How do you tell when it's a relationship that's just not clicking? And how do you tell when it's something that is maybe a reactivity in yourself that you need to work on, like an area for your own development of, I just don't like being asked questions or having things pointed out?
Yeah, I don't know. Clicking is hard. It's the same thing with dating. You have to enjoy one another's company. You have to have had a good conversation, both listening, both speaking. May not be the first time that you decide, it may be the second time or the third time. I'm not saying it has to click the very first time you meet with someone. But it's not something that I can define. I'm sorry. I wish I could. I wish I could say, oh, these are the secrets. This is the trick to finding a good mentor. And then I would be like famous and rich because I would know how to make relationships work. Like I would be like on Love is Blind, and I would be matching everybody up and like saying, oh, this is your match. It can't be done. So that's why you have to have a lot of shots on goal. I do not have one mentor. I have dozens of mentors. They mentor me for different things. They mentor me in different areas. I have had many great sponsors over my career. And I have sponsored many over my career as well. Sometimes I have offered to mentor and I have been rebuffed. Like the person who I gave some advice to or asked some hard questions of didn't take that advice, didn't like my questions. Okay, that's not a match. We're not a match, and so that's okay. That's all those outcomes are okay because you're not going to hit it every time. Yeah.
And you mentioned peer mentoring being one of the best, especially like peer mentoring circles and groups. How do you know if you are equipped to be a mentor or a sponsor?
Everyone can be a mentor and a sponsor at every level, in every job, at every level of their life. I mean, high school students can be mentors and sponsors. Middle school kids can mentor elementary school kids, and there is always an opportunity to support someone with advice. One of the big roles of mentorship and inclusion is seeing someone that looks like you. So the first mentoring group I started because there were not enough senior women available to mentor the women at the more junior levels of my company. There was like 2, and there were like 20 of us. And so we formed a mentoring circle because there just weren't enough senior women to give that sort of vision to what the future would look like. We needed, and I'm not saying that women shouldn't have mentors of all genders. You should, but it does help to have some mentors that look like you, right? And so you'll see a lot of diversity organizations providing mentorship to people earlier in their career that meet their social identity criteria. LGBTQ or, people that identify as Black often have specific mentorship needs they can benefit from all, because we like cross mentoring with different identities, but it's also really great to see someone that looks like you. So that's another great thing about peer mentoring. If there aren't enough senior people, maybe you have a group of peers that work together and support one another. And maybe you have visiting senior people that come into your group and give you, advice. It's a framework for all kinds of learning and development. So I think, you know, anyone can form a peer mentoring group. And I've seen this work at every age, at every job level. I'm involved in executive women peer mentoring groups. You know, see, the more senior you get does not negate your need for support, advice, input, you know, someone to throw ideas off of. Someone to just complain to when something went poorly and get it off of your, you know, can't do that at work all the time. Maybe you do it in your mentoring group, you know. So I definitely think this is something that can happen at any stage of your career. Yeah.
So I want to turn it over to the participants now. I'm going to turn on. So everyone should be allowed now to turn their microphones on, turn their videos on. I want to open up to your questions. Has something in our conversation sparked something you'd like to know more about? And if you're not comfortable asking it aloud, you can also type it in the chat and I'm happy to read it for you.
Questions? I love questions.
And then we have a question in the chat. I want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions. When you talk about building that network of mentors and multiple mentors, should your mentor be in your same research area, or should you include people who are from different areas? Should it be around similar job roles for the peer mentors, or someone who moved up the ladder but was in the role previously?
And that's yes to all. You know, so having mentors in the same similar job role can help you learn stuff that you didn't know to do your job better, and maybe you can give them ideas as well. But having you know, mentor in a different area can give you an insight into a role, a job, a career, a field that you didn't know that was great for you, you know. And also sometimes you're in your company and you think you get, if you've been at one company for a long time, you get in the this is how we do it, you know, kind of mindset. And it's really great to see that things can be different in other organizations, you know. So I frequently have mentees who say, wait, you mean that's not how it has to be? You know, I'm like, no, that's not how it has to be, you know. So, you know, I think we don't just have one mentor. You want to really be seeking out advice, input, you know, from multiple different types of people in your field, without your field, you know, maybe ahead of you, peer mentors, all the things, you know. I see another question, the benefits of group mentoring. So I'll put another blog for you here. This is like one of the reasons why it's so important. I already told you that I think that group mentoring has a huge benefit because it prevents that mismatch failure, which is really a death to a mentoring program. So for organized programs, group mentoring, I 100% advocate, as I already said. When you're in a group mentoring, you have an opportunity to serve as a mentor as well. People sort of take turns being mentors and mentees. You may be giving advice or getting advice. Fantastic training for management, leadership, being a mentor. You know, so I like that everybody you know, can have both roles. I think that's really important. You know, there are, you know, I think the benefits within an organization are just the organized nature of it makes it just much more likely to succeed. So let's say you have a group of 6 people, 2 people stop coming, you still have 4 people in a great relationship that are learning together and benefiting. Also, more different input. If you're discussing, let's say you take turns in your mentoring group with your issues or your growth, and you're getting input from 4 people, it's much better than getting input from 1 person. One of the most fun things I like to do in group mentoring setting is to do a development plan. So let's say, where do you want to be in 5 years? How are you going to get there? If 4 people are giving you advice and ideas for what to put in your plan, what to learn, how to do it, how to do the timing, you're going to come up with a great plan. You know, you may not stick to it 100%, but having a plan of goals is a great way to advance your professional knowledge development skills, you know, way better than just one person, because you're going to get all this brainstorming, you're going to get all these great ideas. So a lot of benefits to group mentoring. I am not knocking individual mentoring. It's just different. It's a thing that has to click naturally with people that you meet and that you choose one another. I just don't think programs work well one-on-one. I hope that answered your question, Jenny.
Are there challenges to group mentoring besides just the getting everyone in the same place for the kickoff?
Yeah, I mean, You know, I would say 95% of the groups that I have worked with, you know, are successful to some extent. So occasionally there's a fail. The group just doesn't get together. That's usually what happens is they don't meet and then they just fall apart. So that's a risk. That's all, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained, you know, that could happen. Some groups just meet for the term of the program. Some groups I know have been meeting for years. I have a mentoring group that I still check in with for like 6 years that I worked with, you know, it's like 6 years ago. Now we don't meet every month, but we periodically check in with one another and, you know, stay in touch. And some mentoring groups go on forever, you know. This model is based on a book called Every Other Thursday by Ellen Danielle. It was a group of women in California who met every other Thursday for, I think, going on 25 years now. And, you know, supporting one another through their science careers. So, you know, any, like I said, it's okay. We always give people permission. Sometimes these things just don't work out. Move on. It's just like networking. Sometimes people say no, move on and go to the next thing. You know, you're looking for the ones that click.
I think that somewhat gets to Deepa's question. So with group mentoring, sometimes there's group mentoring that's confusing because they don't necessarily have that initial kind of set purpose meeting, or other people just are not as committed. Do you suggest, like, do you stay and kind of try to make it work if you're the one who's really got the buy-in, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, if your group's not showing up and it's hard work for you and people aren't into it, I would move on and I wouldn't put that much in. You're not a babysitter, right? So when we do the training and we get everyone in the training, we definitely talk about commitment. You are letting your group down. I'll tell you a story about that. Actually, I can tell that people remember stories. So I had a group that I was mentoring, and there were 6 of us, and one woman just stopped. We usually set some ground rules, like answer your emails. We didn't have like WhatsApp then. This was a long time ago. So we communicated by email, and you were supposed to answer your emails from the group within 48 hours so that we would know if we were meeting, what our topic was to do our organization, you know, and we met in person. This is long before Zoom was common. And one person just dropped off, like stopped answering. She missed a meeting. We didn't hear from her. And you know, we had been meeting well for like 3-4 months, and the person just disappeared. And we're all professional. We were all professional mid-career. I was slightly senior career. I was one of the mentors. There were 4 mentees and 2 mentors in this group. And we all thought this person was sick. Like we were like having like, does this person have cancer? Like what, something terrible must be happening. I mean, that's really what we were. And I spent a lot of energy worried about this person. So finally, I sent an email from the group that just said, we're concerned about you. We're here for you if you need us, if there's any way we can support you, you know, we hope everything's okay, you know. And then finally that person emailed me back and said, oh, hi, I'm fine. I just haven't been able to make the meetings. You know, oh, I got engaged and I'm a little busy house hunting. You know, maybe I'll contact you if I can get back, you know. All that person had to do was take 20 seconds and write us an email and say she was out. And we spent way more time worrying than she respected us by, you know, letting us know. Like, that's just unprofessional, right? So it's a mentoring group. I let her have it. I like called her and I said, that was so not okay, the way that you handled that. Like, so we try to set the professional, you know, in the beginning, like you're making a commitment to one another. If you don't come, the group is not going to work. So if you can't make it, you have a responsibility to let people know what's going on, you know. And she felt bad. She kind of realized after I said it, like what had happened, that we were all sitting here for, you know, 8 weeks worrying about them. You know, it really, we really try to get people to make the commitment. I will say occasionally a group doesn't make it. You just have to move on. You can't be other people's babysitters. You're grown-ups here. You know, this is not babysitting. Okay, I see a question from Jess. One of the challenges that I faced since starting a peer mentoring program was providing incentives for mentors and mentees to meet more often, or for some teams to meet at all. How can a program director manager better support the mentor-mentee relationship? Great question. I think that might go, you're welcome to reach out to me. We can talk about this offline. I don't know if that's quite on topic for this session. I don't want to get too much into coordinating mentoring programs, but a lot of that has to do with that initial messaging. And so we do a lot of work in the beginning. You have to attend the training. You have to fill out a commitment form in many organizations that you will meet every month. You have to register your meetings on the spreadsheet. And if you're not meeting, maybe you all have a Slack channel and people berate you if you don't, if your group isn't meeting. I often serve as a resource for why is your group not meeting? How can we overcome that barrier? And we really set a calendar of meetings. So there's a few things that you can do. It will never solve everyone, Jess. It will never make every group work, but it can help most of the groups at least get off the ground. And then usually what happens is once they've met a few times and they start to get gel as a group, then they want to meet. And then you're kind of over the hump. It's often that first 2 or 3 meetings that's the hardest.
So you're more of the fan of the direct. You've signed up to do this.
Yes.
As you said, you're letting your team down if you're not.
Yeah, you are letting your team down. This is a responsibility. Because the reason why I'm willing to do that is because our data show that when the group meets by the end of the program, they've had if they score their experience, was this beneficial? Did you set goals? Did you reach goals? If they meet, it's almost always a 9 or 10 out of 10, right? If they don't meet, then they're just not even filling out the survey, they're gone, right? So it's really a matter of getting them. Now, again, I'm no magic worker here. People can be irresponsible and not show up. So I just want to be clear about that. There will be groups and relationships that don't gel. And I just don't want people to discount mentoring because of one experience they had that wasn't perfectly positive. Yeah.
Part of the mentorship relationship, you mentioned, I had a question that can go a little bit more in depth. So I wonder, what are the limits as far as sharing your kind of work insecurities, the things that are potentially very sensitive to admit that you need to work on, or that it's your goal to work on?
Yeah, it's just like any relationship. You're not going to share that in meeting number 1, but if you have a long-term relationship where you've developed some trust with a group or a single mentor or mentee, that's where you would like to get, you would like to be able to share your real concerns, something that really didn't go well, that, embarrassed you. And now how do I overcome this? That's a big benefit. Not every mentoring relationship goes that deep, and sponsorship relationships really are not designed to go that deep. So I definitely suggest that you, if you find those relationships, they're valuable, keep them, cherish them. I know mentoring groups that get that deep, and I know mentoring groups that stay a little bit more surface on holding one another accountable because they know each other well enough to say, hey, I know that you can do better at this. What happened here? And I'm going to hold you accountable for these goals. So one of the great secrets of mentoring is accountability. So, before COVID, I used to go to the gym every morning at 6 a.m. with a group of 4 other women. And, if I didn't show up, I got a text message, where are you, Joanne? We're all at the gym, and sometimes knowing that someone was going to text me if I didn't show up got me out of bed at 5:30 to make it to the gym. That's a little bit like what mentorship does. If you say, I'm going to have 6 informational interviews in the next 3 months with people who do 6 different jobs in pharma, and your mentor should say to you, okay, you're on number 2. How are we going to get to the next 4? How are you going to find them? Let me help you. Let's work together on that. Why did you only do 3? You said 6. Let's talk about that. Right. So it's an accountability that we do a better job when we have someone holding us a little bit accountable in a positive way. They're not going to punish you. They're just going to ask you hey, why didn't this happen? So it's a really good thing for goal setting.
Do you have any other questions in the chat? Otherwise, I know I have plenty that I can ask, but I don't want to take up everyone's time.
Great.
Well, we kind of goal setting. What timing do you see goal setting coming in? Is it first meeting, second meeting? Does it kind of come in as you go?
Yeah, great question. Well, you're such good questions, Aaron. I would say you kind of got to feel how that goes. I do it a couple different ways with my groups, not usually the first meeting. The first couple meetings, we usually try and pick some topics that people want to learn together because the goals may not be clear, So, and then I was like by meeting 3 and 4, then I start pushing on goal setting. And sometimes we have a real system to it. Like we give one meeting to each person on the group and we focus on them, or half a meeting, where we focus on their goals, forming their goals, helping them, design a goal plan. You don't usually reach your goals within a short time, but definitely getting some deliverables for oneself. I think that does drive development. You don't always reach them, but you got to set them, So I am a big fan of that. I've also been in groups where there is just one problem to solve, and they want to spend the whole time that we're together working on that one problem from different aspects. I did really have a group that just wanted to learn how to write grants really well. And that had a lot of pieces to it: how to write, how to meet people, how to navigate the granting system. There's a lot of relationships and sponsorship involved in grants, and so we talked about a lot of different aspects through the course of that one. And I think it was really beneficial for everybody. Jenny asks, what's the graceful way to bow out after the first few meetings that chemistry isn't there? It's the same thing with networking. It's been great working with you. I'll be in touch if I see, if I see a need, if you can help me. Thank you so much for your input and support. Usually it's just pretty easy. You don't have to even formally break up with a mentor. If you're in a program, you should finish the program because you don't know where that's going to go. You should give it that time. But if you've had coffee with someone a couple times, that's why I say don't ask them to be your mentor. Just ask them for coffee and see where it goes. Then you won't have to break up with anybody. You just won't schedule coffee again, and I've actually had relationships that have been short-term where then I remember that person has some expertise that I need like 5 years later. And if you've had a nice interaction with them, that's just networking. You can call them later and get their advice, so it's all good.
And then I see probably one of the more popular questions I've heard before: should your sponsor or your mentor ever be your academic advisor or your direct supervisor?
Yeah, so that's a big gamish, so your academic PI should be a mentor to you because that is what they are being paid to do. That's why they are given you as a student, is to mentor you in your education. You are not a technician. You are not an employee. As a PhD student, you should be being mentored. You should be being mentored ethically and inclusively, with no bias, with no harassment, and no bullying. I have a lot of other webinars on that topic. And they definitely should be mentoring you, teaching you how to be a scientist 100%. And if you have a good relationship and you move on, they can stay a mentor for you forever because they're going to know you really well after working with you for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, right? So I wish you all a great mentoring. I just spoke to my graduate advisor a few weeks ago. We still interact. He was a fantastic mentor to me. I was blessed. I know that not everyone has that relationship. You can't count on it. I urge you to seek PIs and labs where they take mentorship seriously. Use social media, see what they write about, ask other students. I have a number of blogs on this topic on the Agene blog. I'm happy to, I think I've talked with seismic people about this. Really choose your labs well. Postdoc is a little bit the next level. You should be being mentored and trained to be an academic. Presumably, if you're going into postdoc years, or someone who understands that you're using this as a transition to industry or to non-academic careers and allowing you that exploration. So you're not getting paid enough as a postdoc for that to be a real lifetime job. You are underpaid for your expertise, your degree, and your education. So again, your boss there is supposed to be a mentor, but they aren't always. So I actually asked this question when I've been in research organizations giving talks on mentoring, and someone asked me, how do I know if my PI is a mentor or a boss? And I say, well, if your PI is happy that you're here learning about mentorship with me during the workday here at 3 o'clock in the middle of the science day, then you have a mentor. If you had to sneak away and you couldn't tell them that you weren't going to be pipetting for this time, then you have a boss. Okay, so that's like a really good criteria there, because they should be pressuring you to learn career skills, to learn about all these things that you need. That's what a good mentor in science does. So I wish you all great mentors, because that's like almost an invaluable mentoring relationship if you can score that one.
For a work supervisor, that's a little bit different, or kind of.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of a good manager is also a mentor to you and sometimes a sponsor. Not everybody has a great manager. If you have, there's a huge range in good, great, better, excellent for managers. I tend to have a mentorship style of management, but I'm not your teacher. So it's not my job to test you. It is my job to give you all the tools and information that I have to make your job better, but I certainly can use things that happen in the job as a learning experience. So it's great if you have a boss that can also mentor, but your boss always has to be your boss, and that's their job. Their job is to be your manager. If you have a boss and not a mentor, can you mold that relationship, or should you give up? I would give up and seek mentorship elsewhere. That is my personal opinion. I have never had good luck with managing up unless the manager or the mentor or the PI is already shown their willingness to learn and embrace a mentorship learning together style. If they're very bossy and they're not mentoring you, I would definitely get through that as best you can, but I would find mentorship. I would seek mentorship elsewhere. Good question, Jenny.
I know we have just 2 minutes left, so I want to do a last minute call for questions. We might be able to have one more. If not, I will have some closing remarks. Oh, that's fair. I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah.
And I know there is a lot more that you could have covered as well. As you said, this is something that you do as a course for.
Yes.
For organizations.
Feel free to reach out to me if your organization or group would like more training and mentoring, or is thinking of organizing a program. I am happy to support.
Yes, we encourage you to check out the links in the chat as well to get even more information on what we've discussed today. Thank you everyone as well for joining us. We hope you found this event helpful, and we hope to see you next month as well for our next event. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.